Marcus Chen stared at the official document in his trembling hands, reading the same impossible words for the fifth time. The Galactic Inheritance Bureau's seal gleamed with authentic holographic patterns that no human technology could forge. Yet the contents seemed like a cruel joke. Property transfer authorization. 1. Drakmari Companion. Designation: Graxth the Bitter. Bequeathed to Marcus Chen. Human. By the late Zephyr Blackstone. Human. Sector 7 Mining Consortium. His cramped studio apartment on Luna Station's lower levels felt even smaller now. The walls, stained with years of recycled air condensation, seemed to close in as he processed what this meant. Uncle Zephyr, whom he'd met exactly twice in his 28 years, had died somewhere in the Outer Rim and left him a dragon. An actual, alien dragon. Marcus laughed bitterly. Here he was, 3 months behind on rent, surviving on nutrition paste and recycled water rations. And some cosmic comedian had decided to saddle him with an exotic pet he couldn't afford to feed, much less house. The inheritance papers included a note in Zephyr's scratchy handwriting. Kid's got potential. Graxth will see it even if he doesn't. The comm unit beside his makeshift workbench chirped with an incoming transmission. Marcus accepted the call, and a holographic projection of a bored-looking Centaurian bureaucrat materialized in his living space. Mr. Chen, I'm Administrator Clicks from the Xenos Creature Transfer Division. We have your inheritance waiting for pickup at Docking Bay 94. I should warn you, the creature has been rather difficult during transit. 3 of our handlers are in medical. Marcus sighed. How big is this dragon exactly? The administrator consulted his tablet. Approximately 4 meters long, 2 meters tall at the shoulder. Weight roughly 800 kilograms. The species is known for intelligence comparable to sentient beings, but this particular specimen has what your uncle described as personality issues. After the call ended, Marcus stared at his reflection in the black screen of his broken entertainment console. His engineering degree from Mars Tech meant nothing when there were no jobs. The automation revolution had eliminated most human technical positions, leaving him to scrape by fixing obsolete appliances for the station's poorest residents. But a dragon, that was something else entirely. The walk to Docking Bay 94 took Marcus through Luna Station's commercial district, past shops selling imported delicacies he couldn't afford, and entertainment venues he'd never see the inside of. Other humans hurried past with their eyes down. The universal posture of the economically displaced. Since the Galactic Federation had welcomed Earth into the cosmic community 30 years ago, humanity had struggled to find its place among species with superior technology, longer lifespans, and evolutionary advantages humans simply couldn't match. The docking bay's massive doors hissed open, revealing a cargo container the size of a small apartment. Warning labels in 17 languages covered its surface, most variations on dangerous, unpredictable, and prone to incineration. Administrator Clicks stood nearby with 2 heavily armored guards and a medical drone. Mr. Chen, before we release your inheritance, you need to sign these liability waivers. The Drakmari are not technically sentient under galactic law, but they're intelligent enough to hold grudges. This one apparently despised your uncle, and transfers that hatred to blood relatives. Marcus signed the documents without reading them. What did he have to lose? The container's locks disengaged with a series of mechanical clicks that echoed through the bay. Steam vented from the environmental systems, creating an ominous fog around the opening door. Marcus heard something moving inside, a scraping sound like claws on metal. When the mist cleared, Marcus got his first look at Graxth the Bitter. The dragon was magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. His scales were a deep emerald green that shifted to black in the shadows, each one the size of Marcus's palm. His wings, folded against his body, showed tears and scars from some ancient battle. His head, serpentine and angular, turned toward Marcus with eyes like molten gold that held an intelligence both alien and deeply familiar. Graxth's voice, when he spoke, was a low rumble that Marcus felt in his bones. So, you're the whelp Zephyr spoke of. Another disappointment, I suspect. The dragon's words hit Marcus like a physical blow. This creature could speak, could think, could judge him, and find him wanting, like everyone else in the galaxy. "I'm Marcus," he said, his voice smaller than he intended. "I know who you are." Grax stepped from the container with surprising grace despite his bulk. "I can smell the failure on you. The poverty. The desperation." Zephyr always had poor judgment. Administrator Clicks cleared his throat nervously. "The creature comes with a basic care package. Dietary supplements, environmental requirements, and a translation matrix. Though it seems direct communication won't be necessary." Marcus watched as the guards wheeled out several crates of supplies. The dragon food alone was worth more than he made in 3 months. "How am I supposed to feed him?" "Ah, that is not our concern," Clicks replied. "The inheritance is now your responsibility. Good luck, Mr. Chen." As the official delegation hurried away, Marcus found himself alone with 800 kilograms of surly alien predator in an empty docking bay. "Well," Grax said, examining his claws with theatrical indifference, "this should be amusing. How long before you abandon me like most humans abandon their problems?" Something in the dragon's tone struck Marcus as odd. Beneath the bitter words, he heard an echo of old hurt, of betrayal that went deeper than disappointment. This wasn't just attitude, this was a creature who had been let down before. "I won't abandon you," Marcus said quietly. Grax snorted, a sound that produced a small puff of smoke. "Humans always say that. Your uncle said it. Then he dragged me across half the galaxy, on his foolish mining expeditions, treating me like an exotic tool instead of—" He trailed off, those golden eyes narrowing. "Instead of what? Instead of family." The word came out like an admission of weakness. Marcus studied the dragon's scarred hide, the way he held himself apart, expecting rejection. He recognized that posture because he wore it himself every day. "My apartment is tiny," Marcus said finally. "You probably won't fit. I've got about 15 credits to my name and no prospects. I can't promise you'll be comfortable or well-fed or happy, but I won't abandon you." Grax tilted his great head, studying Marcus with new interest. "You're either very honest or very stupid." 7. Probably both. For the first time since the container opened, something that might have been amusement flickered in Grax's eyes. "Show me this hovel you call home, human. Let's see what disasters await." The journey back to Marcus's apartment became an exercise in creative problem-solving. Luna Station's corridors weren't designed for creatures of Grax's size, and several times they had to take maintenance tunnels or cargo lifts to avoid areas where the dragon simply wouldn't fit. Other residents stared in shock and fear as they passed. A few pulled out recording devices, probably hoping to sell footage to the entertainment networks. "Penniless human inherits dragon" would make good clickbait. Grax ignored the attention with regal disdain, but Marcus noticed how the dragon positioned himself to block others from getting too close to his new owner. Protective instincts, maybe, or just habit, from traveling with Zephyr. When they reached Marcus's floor, the apartment door proved too small for Grax to enter normally. The dragon solved this problem by folding his wings tightly and squeezing through with liquid grace that should have been impossible for something his size. Inside, Grax's presence transformed the tiny space. He coiled in the center of the room like a living sculpture, his head reaching nearly to the ceiling. Every surface reflected the subtle luminescence of his scales. "It's smaller than I expected," Grax said, but his tone held less mockery than observation. Marcus activated his workbench's overhead light, illuminating the collection of broken devices he repaired for credits. Obsolete data tablets, burned-out environmental controls, ancient communication arrays, the technological debris of a dozen species. "What is all this?" Grax's golden eyes tracked across the equipment with sudden focus. "My work. I fix things, mostly junk that's cheaper to repair than replace." Marcus picked up a Rigelian navigation computer that had been giving him trouble for weeks. "This one's supposed to calculate hyperspace jump coordinates, but the quantum processor keeps throwing errors." Grax moved closer, his great head hovering over the device. Marcus caught a whiff of his scent ozone and heated metal, like the aftermath of a lightning strike. "May I?" Grax asked. Marcus handed over the device, curious. The dragon held it delicately in claws that could have crushed steel, turning it to examine the internal components. "Here," Graxt said, indicating a cluster of crystalline circuits. "These resonance crystals are misaligned. Your diagnostic equipment can't detect it because humans can only perceive a limited spectrum of quantum fluctuations. Drakmari see deeper." "Durong, you know about quantum processors?" "I know about many things. Zephyr wasn't the only one I traveled with." Graxth's voice carried a hint of old pride. "Before your uncle found me, I served as a technical advisor to a Valdorian research expedition. Before that, a cetacean deep space exploration vessel. I've seen more of the galaxy than most beings will in 10 lifetimes." Marcus stared at the dragon with new understanding. "You're not just a companion. You're a colleague." "Was," Graxt corrected. "Now, I'm a burden you inherited along with debt and disappointment." But Marcus was already seeing possibilities. He looked around his apartment with fresh eyes, cataloging the space differently. If he moved his bed to the corner and relocated his food storage to wall-mounted cabinets, there would be room for Graxt to work comfortably. The dragon's knowledge combined with human adaptability could solve problems neither could handle alone. "What if you're not a burden?" Marcus said slowly. "What if you're a business partner?" Graxt's head swiveled toward him, golden eyes bright with something that might have been hope. "Explain. You know advanced technology from dozens of species. I know how to fix things with whatever materials are available. Together, we could repair devices that other technicians can't even diagnose." The dragon was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice had lost its bitter edge. "You would trust me with such work?" "Humans typically prefer to keep their technical knowledge proprietary," Marcus laughed. "What technical knowledge? I'm barely qualified to fix food processors. But you could teach me things no human university offers. And in return, partnership, equal shares in whatever we earn. A place to belong." Marcus met Graxth's eyes directly. "Family, like you said." The dragon's response was so quiet Marcus almost missed it. "I haven't been part of a family in 73 years. "Well," Marcus said, settling beside his new partner with the broken navigation computer between them. "Let's fix that too." Over the following weeks, their partnership developed with surprising speed. Graxt possessed theoretical knowledge that spanned centuries of galactic technological development, while Marcus had the practical skills to implement solutions with limited resources. More importantly, they worked well together. The dragon's presence changed how other residents saw Marcus. Instead of just another failed human engineer, he became the man who lived with a dragon. Customers who would never have trusted their valuable equipment to a desperate human began seeking out their services. Word spread through Luna Station's underground networks. The human and the dragon who could fix anything, no matter how exotic or damaged. They worked late into the station's artificial night, Graxth's scales providing gentle illumination while Marcus soldered circuits and calibrated sensors. Their first major success came from an impossible job, a Krillian meditation device that had suffered catastrophic failure during a spiritual ceremony. The crystalline matrix that generated the device's consciousness-expanding fields had shattered, and conventional repair would have cost more than a small starship. "The crystal fragments still hold their quantum patterns," Graxt explained, his golden eyes reflecting the broken shards. "If we can rebuild the matrix using human fabrication techniques combined with Krillian harmonic theory." It took them 4 days and nearly bankrupted Marcus's supply of raw materials, but they restored the device to full functionality. The grateful Krillian paid them enough to cover 3 months of rent and upgrade their equipment. More jobs followed. A Centaurian gravity generator that had been declared beyond repair. An ancient Terran probe that needed its primitive AI systems restored for a human historical society. A bioneural interface from a crashed exploration vessel that required both organic and synthetic components. Each project taught them something new about working together. Marcus learned to see technology the way Graxt did, as elegant systems of interconnected principles, rather than collections of parts. Graxt discovered human engineering's greatest strength, the ability to improvise solutions from inadequate resources. "Your species has a remarkable talent for making things work despite terrible circumstances," Graxt observed one evening as they completed repairs on a Valdorian communication array. Most beings designed for optimal conditions, humans designed for everything going wrong. We've had a lot of practice, Marcus replied, testing the array's signal strength. Being the newest species in galactic civilization means we're always working with hand-me-downs and obsolete equipment. Perhaps that's why Zephyr chose you, Graxt said thoughtfully. He always appreciated the unconventional approach. As their reputation grew, so did their relationship. Graxt's bitter sarcasm gave way to dry humor, and Marcus found himself looking forward to their conversations as much as their work. The dragon told stories of distant worlds and ancient civilizations, while Marcus shared human perspectives on problem-solving and adaptation. Late at night, when the station's activity cycle wound down, they would sit in comfortable silence, Graxt's warm presence filling the small apartment, while Marcus sketched designs for their next project. These were the moments when Marcus realized his life had changed in ways he never could have imagined. The inheritance he'd thought was a burden had become the foundation for something neither of them had expected to find a place where they belonged, together, creating solutions that neither humans nor Drakmari could achieve alone. But as word of their success spread beyond Luna Station, it also reached ears that heard opportunity where others heard partnership. In the vast network of galactic commerce, a human and dragon team with their particular talents would soon attract attention they were unprepared to handle. Change was coming, and with it, challenges that would test everything they had built together. 6 months after inheriting Graxt, Marcus Chen found himself staring at a problem that could either make their reputation or destroy everything they'd built together. The device on their workbench hummed with barely contained energy, its alien geometry defying every principle of safe engineering he'd ever learned. "Tell me again why we accepted this job," Marcus said, wiping sweat from his forehead as he studied the Etherean quantum consciousness transfer matrix. Graxt shifted his position, golden eyes reflecting the device's eerie blue glow. "Because the Etherean collective offered us more credits than we could earn in 5 years of normal repairs. And because you have an unfortunate tendency to accept impossible challenges." The dragon was right, but Marcus had learned to trust those instincts. 6 months of partnership had taught him that the impossible jobs were often the most rewarding, both financially and intellectually. Their reputation had spread far beyond Luna Station, drawing clients from across 3 sectors who needed problems solved that conventional repair services couldn't handle. Their success hadn't gone unnoticed by the competition. Valdorian tech consortiums, Centaurian engineering guilds, and even some human corporations had begun taking interest in the unlikely partnership that was disrupting established repair markets. "The consciousness matrix is stable," Graxt continued, his voice carrying the focused calm he adopted during delicate work. "But the transfer medium has degraded beyond standard replacement protocols. We need to rebuild the quantum substrate using materials that don't technically exist in this dimensional framework." Marcus nodded, understanding perhaps half of what Graxt had said, but knowing his partner well enough to recognize the challenge beneath the technical jargon. "So we're making up new physics as we go?" "Essentially, yes." Their apartment had transformed over the months into something resembling a professional workshop. Marcus had negotiated expanded space from their building's management, trading repair services for additional rooms. Graxt now had proper workspace where he could fully extend his wings, and their equipment filled 3 connected chambers with the soft hum of advanced diagnostic tools. The door chime interrupted their concentration. Marcus glanced at the security monitor and frowned. 3 figures in expensive suits waited outside 2 humans and a Centaurian, all carrying the subtle confidence of corporate authority. "Expecting visitors?" Graxt asked, sensing his partner's tension. "Not ones dressed like that." Marcus opened the door but kept the security chain engaged. "Can I help you?" The lead human, a woman with silver hair and calculating eyes, smiled with professional warmth. "Mr. Chen, I'm Director Sarah Voss from Titan Engineering Solutions. We'd like to discuss a business proposition." Marcus recognized the name. Titan Engineering was one of the largest human-owned tech companies in the galaxy, with contracts spanning military, civilian, and research applications. They specialized in reverse engineering alien technologies for human use. "We're busy with a project right now," Marcus said carefully. "Yes, The Etherian Consciousness Matrix. Director Voss replied smoothly. We're aware of your work. In fact, that's why we're here. Behind her, the Centaurian stepped forward. His forearms moved in patterns Marcus had learned to recognize as mild agitation. I am Technical Coordinator Xeftal. Your recent accomplishments have attracted attention in certain circles. We represent interests that could greatly expand your operational capacity. Grax appeared behind Marcus, having to lower his head to peer through the doorway. The visitor's reaction was immediate. The human stepped back instinctively, while the Centaurian's manipulator arms clicked with nervous excitement. A Drakmari, Xeftal whispered. The reports were accurate. What reports? Marcus demanded. But Director Voss had already regained her composure. Mr. Chen, your partnership has achieved remarkable results, but you're operating with severe resource constraints. Titan Engineering can offer unlimited funding, access to exclusive materials, and protection under corporate umbrella protocols. In exchange for what? Grax's voice carried a low rumble that made the visitors visibly uncomfortable. Voss smiled again, but this time it seemed forced. Exclusivity agreements. Your innovations would become proprietary developments under Titan's intellectual property protection. We'd provide you with significant compensation and research facilities that would make this, she gestured dismissively at their workshop, look primitive by comparison. Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. He'd heard variations of this offer before. In school, during his brief employment with other companies. The promise of resources in exchange for independence. Creativity traded for security. We'd need to review any contracts, he said diplomatically. Of course, Voss agreed. But I should mention that the Etherian Commission you're currently working on. There have been inquiries from certain regulatory bodies about unlicensed consciousness manipulation. Such work can be legally complex without proper corporate protection. The threat was subtle but clear. Accept their offer, or face legal challenges that could shut them down. After the visitors left, Marcus and Grax sat in silence for several minutes. The Etherian device continued its quiet humming, a reminder of the work they'd been forced to abandon. They want to buy us, Grax said finally. More like acquire us. There's a difference. Marcus ran his hands through his hair, thinking. Titan Engineering doesn't make offers to small operations unless they see something valuable. They think we've discovered something they can't replicate on their own. Have we? Marcus looked around their workshop, seeing it through fresh eyes. Their success hadn't come from superior technology or vast resources. It had come from the combination of Grax's ancient knowledge and human adaptability, from their willingness to approach problems from angles that conventional engineers wouldn't consider. Maybe, he said slowly. But whatever we've discovered, it's not something you can just transfer to a corporate research division. Grax nodded agreement. The bond between us, the way we complement each other's abilities, that cannot be replicated through employment contracts. Over the following days, pressure mounted from multiple directions. Titan Engineering's legal department began filing regulatory challenges to their licensing status. Competitors spread rumors about the safety of their work methods. Some clients, nervous about corporate attention, canceled pending contracts, but others responded differently. Dr. Kefta, an elderly Etherian researcher, arrived at their workshop with a security escort and a proposal that made Marcus's head spin. The consciousness matrix you repaired has performed beyond all expectations, she explained in her species' crystalline voice. The quantum substrate modifications you implemented have opened new possibilities in consciousness transfer research. The Etherian Collective wishes to commission a much larger project. She activated a holographic display that filled half their workshop. The image showed a massive space station, unlike anything Marcus had seen before, a structure that seemed to blend technology with something approaching organic architecture. The Transcendent Station. Dr. Kefta continued. A research facility designed to study the intersection of consciousness, technology, and evolutionary development. But the core consciousness matrices have failed beyond conventional repair. The project has been dormant for 3 years. Marcus studied the holographic blueprints. his engineer's mind automatically analyzing the structural challenges. What kind of matrices are we talking about? Quote, 37 primary nodes, each one regulating consciousness transfer for multiple species simultaneously. The quantum substrate extends across 7-dimensional phases, and the harmonic resonance patterns must maintain stability across significant distances. Graxt moved closer to the display, his golden eyes reflecting the swirling energy patterns. This isn't just a repair job. This is rebuilding the fundamental architecture of advanced consciousness manipulation. Precisely, Dr. Kefta's form shimmered with what Marcus had learned was Etherean excitement. And based on your innovations with our test matrix, you may be the only team in the galaxy capable of such work. The offer was staggering, enough credits to buy their own research station, plus access to technologies that most species guarded as state secrets. But Marcus found himself thinking about Director Voss's threats and the implications of taking on a project this visible. What about Titan Engineering? He asked. They're already questioning our licensing status. Dr. Kefta's response carried surprising steel. The Etherean Collective operates under Treaty of Advanced Consciousness provisions. No single species can interfere with consciousness research that benefits galactic development. If Titan Engineering attempts legal interference with this project, they will face diplomatic consequences they cannot afford. That evening, Marcus and Graxt worked late on the smaller matrix, but their conversation kept returning to the larger implications of Dr. Kefta's offer. It's everything we could want, Marcus said, adjusting the quantum resonance calibration for the 100th time. Unlimited resources, protection from corporate interference, a project that could establish our reputation permanently. But, Graxt prompted, sensing his partner's hesitation, but it's also exactly the kind of high-profile work that could attract attention we're not ready for. The consciousness transfer research. Some species consider that getting dangerously close to playing with the fundamental nature of sentient existence. Graxt was quiet for a moment, then spoke with unusual formality. Marcus, there is something I haven't told you about my past. Something relevant to this decision. Marcus looked up from his work, recognizing the tone. In their months together, he'd learned that Graxt only used that voice when discussing matters of deep personal significance. Before I met Zephyr, I worked on a project similar to this one. A Drakmari research initiative to create a consciousness network that would allow our species to share knowledge across vast distances. I was part of the technical team that designed the core matrices. What happened? We succeeded. Graxt's golden eyes held memories that stretched back decades. For a brief time, we achieved true consciousness networking. Drakmari across 3 star systems could share thoughts, experiences, even emotions in real time. Marcus waited, sensing there was more to the story. The network was too successful. Individual consciousness began to merge into collective consciousness. We started losing ourselves in the shared experience. Some of my colleagues stopped existing as separate entities entirely, becoming fragments of the network consciousness. How did you escape? I didn't, not completely. Graxt's voice dropped to a whisper. Part of me is still connected to that network. It's dormant now, has been for 70 years. But the connection remains. That's why I can sense quantum fluctuations that other beings cannot detect. That's why I understand consciousness matrices in ways that should be impossible. Marcus stared at his partner with new understanding. The dragon's extraordinary technical knowledge, his ability to perceive dimensions of technology that escaped other species, it all came from his partial integration with an ancient consciousness network. That's why you've been alone so long, Marcus said quietly. You're afraid of what might happen if that network ever reactivates. I'm afraid of what might happen if someone tries to use my connection for their own purposes, Graxt corrected. The Transcendence Station project. If it's designed the way I suspect it is, working on those matrices could trigger a resonance cascade. The old network might try to reconnect. They sat in silence for several minutes, the implications settling between them. The Etherean project could give them everything they wanted professionally, but it might cost Graxt his individual identity. On the other hand, refusing could mean losing their independence to Titan Engineering's corporate pressure. There's a third option, Marcus said finally. We take the project, But we modify it. Instead of just repairing the existing matrices, we redesign them with safeguards based on your experience. We make consciousness transfer technology that connects beings without consuming them. Grax tilted his great head, considering. That would require innovations that no one has attempted before. We'd be writing new theoretical frameworks while building the technology to implement them. So, Tuesday, Marcus grinned. When have we ever done anything the conventional way? For the first time that evening, Grax's expression lightened. Never. And that's precisely why it might work. The decision to accept the Etherian commission came with immediate consequences. Within hours of their acceptance, Titan Engineering's legal challenges intensified. Director Voss herself arrived at their workshop with a revised offer that was part bribery, part ultimatum. "You're making a serious mistake, Mr. Chen," she said, studying their expanded facilities with calculating eyes. "The consciousness transfer project will attract scrutiny from species and organizations you're not equipped to handle. Titan Engineering can provide protection that the Etherian Collective cannot." "What kind of scrutiny?" Marcus asked. Voss exchanged glances with her Centaurian colleague before answering. "There are factions within the Galactic Federation who consider consciousness manipulation research to be a form of technological heresy. They believe such work threatens the fundamental nature of individual existence. Some of these factions have aggressive response protocols." Grax spoke from the shadows where he'd been listening. "You're referring to the Purity movement." "Among others." Voss's professional mask slipped slightly, revealing genuine concern. "Mr. Chen, your partner's reputation precedes him, a Drakmari with his particular history working on consciousness matrices. There are beings who would consider that an existential threat to galactic stability." Marcus felt a chill of understanding. The Purity movement was a cross-species coalition that opposed what they called consciousness contamination. Any technology that could alter or merge individual awareness. They'd been responsible for the destruction of several research facilities over the past decade, always claiming that such work threatened the natural order of sentient existence. "If we work under Titan Engineering's protection," Marcus said slowly, "what happens to our autonomy?" "You'd have complete creative freedom within established safety parameters," Voss replied smoothly, "and your innovations would receive the recognition they deserve." It was Grax who answered first. "Recognition under Titan Engineering's proprietary classifications. Our work would become their exclusive property, used for their benefit rather than galactic advancement." "That's the price of protection," Voss said bluntly. "Choose carefully, Mr. Chen. Some prices are higher than others." After she left, Marcus and Grax prepared for the journey to Transcendence Station. They'd made their choice, accepting both the opportunity and the risks that came with it. But as they packed their equipment and prepared to leave Luna Station behind, both partners knew they were stepping into something far larger and more dangerous than either had imagined. The Consciousness Transfer Project would test not just their technical abilities, but the strength of their partnership and the principles they'd built their work upon. In the depths of space, surrounded by alien technology that touched the very essence of consciousness itself, they would discover whether human ingenuity and Drakmari wisdom could overcome forces that had destroyed others who dared to explore the boundaries between individual and collective existence. The unthinkable was waiting for them among the stars, and they were about to meet it head-on. The Transcendence Station hung in the void like a crystalline flower made of metal and energy, its 7 spiraling arms extending into dimensions that hurt to look at directly. Marcus Chen floated in the central consciousness matrix chamber, his magnetic boots keeping him oriented while he worked on repairs that defied every engineering principle he'd learned. Harmonic resonance at 92% and climbing, Grax reported from his position near the primary control nexus. The dragon's scales had taken on an iridescent quality in the station's exotic lighting, and his golden eyes reflected patterns that seemed to shift between realities. The substrate modifications are holding better than projected. 3 weeks aboard Transcendence Station had taught Marcus that impossible was merely a starting point. The consciousness transfer matrices they were rebuilding operated on principles that bridged multiple dimensional phases, requiring tools that existed partially in spaces human minds couldn't fully comprehend. But Graxth's unique perception of quantum states, combined with Marcus's talent for improvised solutions, had made steady progress where conventional approaches had failed for years. Dr. Kefta materialized beside them in her energy form manifestation, the Etherean's crystalline voice carrying notes of excitement. Matrix 34 is now fully operational. The consciousness transfer rate has exceeded all previous benchmarks. Your hybrid approach to quantum substrate reinforcement has revolutionized our understanding of multidimensional consciousness architecture. Marcus allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. They developed techniques that no textbook described, solving problems by combining Graxth's ancient knowledge with human ingenuity in ways that neither Drakmari nor human engineers had imagined possible. "How many matrices remain?" he asked, checking his diagnostic readings on a device that was part human tablet, part Drakmari quantum scanner, and part something he'd invented because nothing else would work in the station's exotic environment. "3 primary nodes," Graxth replied, but his voice carried an undertone Marcus had learned to recognize as concern. "However, I'm detecting some unusual resonance patterns in the deeper substrate layers. The networking protocols are becoming more active as we bring additional matrices online." Dr. Kefta's form flickered with what Marcus interpreted as surprise. Networking protocols were disabled decades ago after the consciousness wars. The matrices should be operating in complete isolation. Marcus saw Graxth's scales ripple with tension. A sign his partner was accessing memories he usually kept buried. The networking protocols were never disabled. They were dormant. "There's a difference. Explain, Doctor," Kefta demanded. Graxth moved closer to the central matrix array, his massive form navigating the zero-gravity environment with practiced grace. "Consciousness transfer technology creates quantum entanglement patterns that persist beyond the active matrix connections. When multiple matrices operate simultaneously, they naturally begin to resonate with each other. The more matrices you activate, the stronger the networking effect becomes," Marcus finished, understanding hitting him like cold vacuum. "You're saying this station was designed to create a galaxy-spanning consciousness network?" "Not just designed for it," Graxth said quietly. "It was designed to be the central hub for such a network. The Etherean Collective, the Drakmari research project I worked on, the consciousness transfer experiments by a dozen other species over the past century, they were all preliminary tests for this." Dr. Kefta's energy form began to fluctuate wildly, patterns of light cascading through her crystalline structure. "Impossible. The consciousness wars ended such research. The Treaty of Individual Sovereignty specifically prohibits networking technologies that could compromise personal identity. Treaties," Graxth observed with bitter humor, "are often written to hide the truth rather than reveal it." Marcus felt pieces of a vast puzzle clicking together in his mind. The corporate pressure from Titan Engineering, the threats about regulatory scrutiny, the purity movement's violent opposition to consciousness research, all of it made sense if there was a hidden agenda to create the galaxy's first artificial collective consciousness. "We need to shut down the matrices we've already repaired," he said. "If the networking effect is building towards some kind of cascade." Alarms began shrieking throughout the station before he could finish the sentence. Emergency lighting bathed the chamber in angry red, and Dr. Kefta's form began to strobe with panic signals. "Multiple contacts approaching at maximum velocity," the station's AI announced in a voice that carried harmonics from 17 different species. "Configuration suggests purity movement, assault vessels. Time to intercept, 14 minutes. Marcus pulled up tactical displays on his improvised diagnostic device. 20 ships were closing on Transcendence Station, their energy signatures marking them as heavily armed vessels from multiple species, united by their opposition to consciousness manipulation technology. "They're not here to shut us down," Graxth said, his voice carrying grim certainty. "They're here to destroy the station completely. The networking cascade we've triggered, they'll see it as proof that their worst fears about consciousness technology are justified." Dr. Kefta's panic intensified. The station's defensive systems were never fully installed. "We have minimal shielding and no offensive capabilities. We cannot withstand an assault of this magnitude." Marcus's mind raced through options, each one more impossible than the last. 20 warships against an unarmed research station was a battle they couldn't win through conventional means. But as he stared at the matrix arrays they'd spent weeks repairing, a different possibility began to form. What if we don't fight them? He said suddenly. Both Graxt and Dr. Kefta turned toward him with expressions of confusion. The networking cascade, Marcus continued, his thoughts crystallizing with the clarity that came during his best engineering solutions. Instead of trying to stop it, what if we use it? Not to create a permanent collective consciousness, but to establish temporary communication with the attacking fleet? Graxth's golden eyes widened with understanding. You want to network their consciousness with ours, show them directly what we're actually doing here, instead of letting them operate on fear and assumption. Can it be done, Doctor? Kefta asked. Not safely, Graxt admitted. The consciousness networking protocols I'm familiar with were designed for willing participants of the same species. Forcing an involuntary connection across multiple species could cause permanent psychological damage to everyone involved. Marcus studied the matrix readouts, seeing patterns within patterns. But you said you're still partially connected to the old Drakmari network. What if that connection could serve as a buffer, a translation layer that could make multi-species consciousness sharing possible without the destructive effects? Graxt was quiet for several seconds, his massive head turning to study the matrix arrays with new intensity. It would require me to fully reactivate my network connection. If the cascade effect is too strong, I could lose my individual identity entirely. I'd become just another node in a collective consciousness that might never stop expanding. There has to be another way, Marcus said. But even as he spoke, he was running calculations in his head. The attacking fleet would reach them in less than 10 minutes. There wasn't time for another solution. There isn't, Graxt said simply. But Marcus, if this works, if we can establish communication with the attacking fleet and convince them to stand down, the precedent we set here will change how the galaxy thinks about consciousness technology forever. Instead of fearing it, species might learn to use it for communication, understanding, even cooperation. And if it doesn't work, then I'll be lost in a collective consciousness. And you'll probably be vaporized by 20 warships. Marcus looked at his partner, the grouchy, brilliant, loyal dragon who had become the best friend he'd ever had. The thought of losing Graxt to save their lives felt like the worst kind of defeat. But then an idea struck him, so simple and human that he almost laughed. What if we don't let you get lost? He said. What if I stay connected to you throughout the process? Serve as your anchor to individual identity. Humans can't interface with Drakmari consciousness networking, Graxt protested. Your neural architecture isn't compatible. No, but human technology is adaptable. Marcus was already pulling components from his diagnostic device, his hands working with the automatic precision that came from months of impossible repairs. Give me 3 minutes and some of the quantum substrate material we've been using for the matrices. What Marcus built in the next 3 minutes violated approximately 17 laws of physics and safety protocols from at least 20 different species. Using Drakmari quantum substrate, human electrical components, and Etherian consciousness transfer theory, he created a hybrid interface that should have been impossible to construct and deadly to use. This is insane, Dr. Kefta observed as Marcus attached the jury-rigged device to both himself and Graxt. It's human, Marcus corrected. We specialize in insane. With the attacking fleet less than 5 minutes away, Graxt activated his connection to the ancient Drakmari consciousness network. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. His scales blazed with patterns of light that seemed to extend into dimensions Marcus couldn't see, and the entire matrix chamber filled with harmonics that resonated in frequencies beyond normal hearing. Marcus felt the connection established through his improvised interface. And suddenly he was experiencing consciousness from a completely alien perspective. Graxth's memories flowed around him, centuries of accumulated knowledge, the vast collective wisdom of the Drakmari network. And beneath it all, the fierce individual identity of his partner fighting to maintain itself against the pull of collective existence. Together, they reached out through the station's consciousness matrices toward the approaching fleet. The first contact was like touching electricity made of thought. The minds they encountered were filled with fear, anger, and absolute conviction that consciousness networking technology represented an existential threat to individual existence. Marcus felt their terror at the idea of losing personal identity, their determination to destroy the station before it could corrupt the natural order of the galaxy. But through Graxth's network connection, he could also feel something else, the deep loneliness that drove their opposition. Species across the galaxy lived in isolation from each other, unable to truly communicate their thoughts and feelings beyond the crude limitations of language and technology. The Purity Movement's fear of consciousness networking came from the same source as everyone else's secret desire for it, the fundamental wish to be understood by other beings. Working together, Marcus and Graxth began to share not just thoughts but experiences. They showed the attacking fleet their memories of partnership, the gradual growth of trust between human and dragon, the joy of solving impossible problems together, the satisfaction of achievements that neither could have accomplished alone. More importantly, they demonstrated that consciousness networking didn't have to mean the loss of individual identity. Marcus remained entirely human while experiencing Graxth's draconic perspective, and Graxth maintained his own personality while accessing the collective knowledge of his species. The response from the fleet was immediate and transformative. Ship after ship slowed their approach as crews experienced directly what consciousness sharing could mean, not the terrifying absorption into collective existence they feared, but enhanced communication that preserved and celebrated individual differences. The captain of the lead vessel, a Rigelian whose species had lost the ability to share emotions centuries ago, sent a message that arrived simultaneously through traditional communication and consciousness network. How is this possible? We can hear each other's thoughts, but we remain ourselves. Because, Marcus replied through the network, his words carrying the weight of human adaptability and Drakmari wisdom combined. Consciousness sharing isn't about erasing individuality, it's about building bridges between minds that choose to connect. The standoff ended not with weapons fire but with the most unprecedented diplomatic conference in galactic history. Representatives from the attacking fleet boarded Transcendence Station to experience consciousness networking firsthand, and within hours, species that had been enemies for generations were finding common ground they'd never known existed. Dr. Kefta, her crystalline form practically incandescent with excitement, began documenting protocols for voluntary consciousness sharing between different species. The network Marcus and Graxth had established became a template for communication technologies that could enhance understanding without threatening individual identity. But the most significant change was personal. As Marcus disconnected from the improvised interface, he found that his bond with Graxth had evolved beyond partnership into something unprecedented in galactic history. A permanent, but voluntary consciousness link between human and Drakmari that allowed them to share thoughts and experiences, while maintaining their distinct personalities. The unthinkable, Graxth observed as they watched former enemies working together to explore new possibilities for interspecies cooperation, was not that consciousness networking could be safe and beneficial. The unthinkable was that it would take a penniless human engineer and a grouchy dragon to prove it. Marcus grinned, feeling his partner's amusement echo through their shared connection. Uncle Zephyr's last joke turned out pretty well after all. Indeed, Graxth replied, his golden eyes reflecting satisfaction that Marcus could now feel as well as see. Though, I suspect this is only the beginning of our adventures. Looking out at the stars through Transcendence Station's viewports, Marcus knew his partner was right. They'd started as an unlikely pair trying to make enough credits to survive, and they'd ended up changing the fundamental nature of communication between intelligent species. Not bad for a penniless engineer and a homely dragon. Years later, when historians attempted to document the moment that transformed galactic civilization, they would struggle to explain how two beings with such different backgrounds had achieved the impossible. They would analyze the technical innovations, study the diplomatic breakthroughs, and catalog the cultural changes that followed. But they would miss the simple truth that Marcus and Graxth understood from the beginning. The greatest achievements come not from perfect plans or unlimited resources, but from the willingness to help each other solve problems that neither could handle alone. In a galaxy full of ancient wisdom and advanced technology, it took human stubbornness and alien patience working together to discover that consciousness sharing could unite rather than destroy, create understanding rather than conformity, and build bridges between minds, while celebrating the differences that made each individual unique. The inheritance that had seemed like a burden became the foundation for a new era of galactic cooperation. And in the end, that was the most unthinkable thing of all, that family, formed by choice rather than genetics, could change the universe one impossible problem at a time.